I don't even know what date it is, 27. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Sunday session. We are here, just Kevin and I today, to explain exactly what multi-species farming is all about. It is the 27th of July. I can't believe time is ticking away so quickly. And hopefully we can have some actual discussions, live discussions. I'll just bring up the chat so I remember to communicate with everybody. First of all, I'd like to show a video that I made. It's a short video. It sort of explains my little journey of how all of this started with regenerative farming and then Farming Revolution. It's something that I made for a gentleman called Tom Barnett because he was setting up his channel years ago, just sort of after the COVID era. And he wanted us to all make, so it was going to be called Threads. And so this was going to be my intro to the regenerative farming aspect so people could learn and watch videos, which is what I've been doing anyway, but it was specifically for him. Anyway, that never actually eventuated. So I thought, well, this piece stands on its own and you are going to watch it now. The story began in 2016 with a book I wrote, The Peril of Our Bees, and when the breeding pair of wedge-tailed eagles left my sky. The significance of an apex predator leaving is Mother Nature's way of indicating the ecosystem you are living in has broken. For me, the spiritual aspect is stronger. These wedge-tailed eagles are my totem. They saw the space between life and the other side. I knew I was heading for a collapse, and in January 2017 I had an emotional and physical breakdown. The healthy food I had eaten had given me an autoimmune disease, and all this combined with the stress of borrowing money created a perfect storm, one that pushed me straight into the hands of regenerative farmers and beekeepers. This is the story of my regeneration and how Mother Earth has healed me by giving me the ability to see the truth. It starts with soil and seed, conserving health, and ends with being profitable, but not in the sense of money, profit in a holistic sense where you become rich in time, health, happiness, and environment. We are not superior to this planet. We are a part of the entire ecosystem. We are caught up in the cycles of life, and money doesn't make our lives profitable, but an entire systems approach does. Our health and that of the world we live in is number one. It's a very powerful piece. It gets me every time, especially me watching me lying in hospital bed. Without the dramatics, though, I did just put in the chat, tell me what happened and what process did I go through, because I am about to explain it, but I'm just wondering if anybody can see. It is sometimes called rebirth when we go through a process and we come out the other side stronger. So, you know, the things that the expression of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So this leads on to the two words today. It was going to be change versus transformation. And then as I did my work and a little bit of research into it, I realized that I was actually talking about metamorphosis. So in the chat, that's what you should have been putting down. What you saw was metamorphosis. And obviously we understand that with caterpillars going into butterflies. That's just the actual transformation that we are all quite accustomed to. So the reason I am explaining about what's the difference between change and metamorphosis is because every language session I do, something comes up for me. And obviously this last week, something very strong has come up for me. And it's been the misunderstanding of what multi-species farming actually is. Multi-species farming is not cover crops. It's something a lot bigger than that. But before we go into that, this is why Kevin and I are here today. I just want to explain what the difference is between change, which is just a modification of what you already are or who you already are or what you're doing. To change something means that you just substitute one thing for another thing. When you go into the regenerative side and actually regenerate your life, which is what I had to do, you go through a transformation process, and it's a lot deeper, it's a lot more meaningful, and you actually look at the whole in an entirely different way, and you incorporate your life into the environment and the climate that you're living in. And when I say climate, I mean not what the politicians talk about. And the environment is not just your landscape. It's about the way that you're living in your home, with your family, with your friends, all of that way of being. And what happens is, and what you saw there was, I actually went through a metamorphic process, which was rebirth into a brand new form. It's something that is really difficult. You have to really focus on things. And I realized at the beginning, I was only 41 there, that I was reliant on chiropractors. I was reliant on psychologists. And so through the process, the regenerative process, which I've been through for the past 8 years, what I've done is I've become more resilient. And we did do those words as well, that language session at another time. And also what this leads to as well is your perception of things changes to perspective. And so all of these language sessions that I'm doing is all starting to make much more sense, even to me, when we do this process every fortnight with Kevin. And Kevin's just been fantastic. So here he is. Welcome, Kevin, to the Sunday session.
Good morning.
What question I would like to ask you straight up is, what does multi-species farming mean to you?
And that's the fun thing when we start talking about the multi-species farming. Everybody is looking for that silver bullet, the one thing to do, and it isn't something that it's smacking us in the head and we've figured this magical way of doing it. It's going back to old time agronomy. And so when we are talking about the multi-species farming, the gateway is, and the easiest thing that we could manage is using cover crops, plant diversity. But that's the gateway. When we start looking at what changes when we start adding plant diversity, changing that, doing that metamorphosis and changing our whole system, because just like my farming career, I started with I went through the University of Saskatchewan. I have my degree in agronomy, specialized in crop science, minored in soil science. Came to the farm, worked for a soil testing company based out of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and just years back, and just go hard with chemistry. When I found out when I was doing the economics and the risk, I said, okay, we have to do things differently. And so it isn't just changing one thing; it's changing the whole approach. And so when we start looking at the multi-species farming, we change that to, the first step in my train of thought was, okay, we need plant diversity, we need green plants, we need to have livestock out on the land. So okay, so that was a big change. And when I met Dr. Chamili Zavala out of the Chinook Applied Research Association Soil Health Lab, how's that for a title? Um, she educated me more about the soil biology. And in university, in uni, the two classes I thought were a waste of time was soil microbiology and plant ecology. And that was I had to go back and I had to relearn all this stuff on my own, and with a lot of help from a lot of other people. But it's now we start looking at diversity underneath our feet. We start looking at, and I just got back from 3 weeks going through Ukraine, and doing some consulting with some Ukrainian farmers. And one of the things that I forget which of the soil health coaches said it was, the first thing you do, you get into the field and you stop and listen. You listen for birds. How many different birds can you hear? And in Ukraine, it'd be one or two birds. Whereas on our farm, when we had the cover crops happening, we had the cows grazing and then the bison grazing. then the number of wildlife that we're seeing on the farm, when we're seeing the I was going to say the jackrabbits, but in Australia that's really frowned upon. But these are a large hare. Uh, not a lot of them around, but we had 1,500 acres, so 700 hectares about, and we have 11 of these hares, and it was neat to watch them bounce around. We had about 300 white-tailed deer, we had moose, we had hawks, we had grouse and partridges, and just the list just kept growing. And once again, it's nature gives you a report card, and her report card is what kind of wildlife do you have in there. And once again, you don't want to have the locusts and these plagues of rabbits like in Australia, but it's that diversity of wildlife. So that's just another layer of this multi-species. So yes, it is plants. Yes, it is intercropping. It's relay cropping. It's all of that stuff. But what else is happening in the system?
Yeah, I wondered how your answer would be because, of course, your business is called Cover Crops Canada. So when I came to you, or just not claiming the fact that it's multi-species farming, my concept, but it's an idea that encompasses so much more than just cover cropping. So when you first heard of it, did you think, were you offended? Did you did you go, wait a minute, that's not right?
It's like I said, it's the gateway. So when I was over in Ukraine, we're seeing these fields, and there was no life in them. The soils were dead, over tilled, over fertilized, over fungicide, using monocrops. There was no livestock. That is, how do we get this system going? And is it compost? Is it buying a bug in a jug? Or is it the biology is there, and we just have to wake it up? And looking at what Haggerty's are doing in WA, um, they're not using anything, no rocket science there from the standpoint of getting things going. But now they're having plant species that are growing in their fields that the researchers and the botanists thought they were extinct. Now they're waking up. Now they're coming back.
Mm. Yeah. And let's add the farming aspect. So I think people think that just by changing practices, they're actually going to, or they're understanding regenerative way. But it's the actual principles. So there's a massive difference between the principles and the practices. And that's why we covered the 5 principles. That's why Martin talks about back to basic. Let's really understand the principles. From my perspective, the principles never change, but your practices do, depending on where you are, your environment, your climate, your scenario, what you're capable of doing, or everything that you can manage. Can you expand on that for me, please?
Absolutely. And this is where, the soil health principles I go with. I wasn't sure when we went to Australia that, is this applicable? Oh, yes, they are. Going to Ukraine, is it applicable? Absolutely. Now it goes back to context. Now it's setting goals. Now it is working within the limitations that you have, whether it's economics, whether it is labor, timing, um, social pressure. All of these different things will then indicate how you are going to tackle your metamorphosis. And this is what is really challenging from the producer standpoint of, okay, I'm here. I really like this idea of going over to this regenerative thing, but how do I do it? How do I take my operation the way it is now, and how do we implement change? And this is where we have to have the team. Whoever else is involved in that team has to be on board and have to understand and have to have either similar goals or understand what your goals are, so that we can be pulling the same direction. And then
Yeah.
once we have that, so the labor, what crops you're growing, so rotation, what kind of fertility problems do you have, what kind of erosion, what kind of climate, what kind of all of those are going to be put into a ball. And this is where systems thinking really is really important. We have to be able to think, what is this system? How are we going to take the system that we're at? How are we going to metamorphose that into this new, more resilient, less reliant system?
So that's why I'm just going to bring up the principles, because this is why we have really gone through this in a very case-by-case study with certain people on this channel every fortnight to actually discuss it. So the 5, I'll just go through it. So increased biodiversity, in that there is animals, plants, and microorganisms. And that also includes the insects. So the insects, I was thinking, where do you put that, in the microorganisms or in the animals? Anyway, the insects are very, very important. We don't want to get rid of even the bad insects, because they're there for a reason. So that's where the grazing also comes into it as well, which is increasing the biodiversity. Then you've got the minimized soil disturbance, which there are some people, when Kevin was saying about the rigid thinking, it's about absolutely no till. So we've discussed that as well, that no, sometimes you do need to actually disturb the soil. And even if you need to, if you're so successful with your regenerative way that it's too fungal, you do need to disrupt it so that it comes back to a little bit better ratio of bacteria to fungal. And then keep the ground covered, which of course Kevin's Cover Crops Canada business is all about. Keep the ground covered. And that is incorporated with increasing landscape function, because infiltration links those two together. And we've done that about slaking and natural infiltration, and produced a beautiful video with Ray Archuleta on Campbell's olive grove. It's quite a good fun video, as well as being really informative and educational. And then of course increasing all nutrient cycles, which is what some of the photos that we're going to see today, you can actually see all these cycles increasing, and that's what we covered a fortnight ago. So always come back to those principles, and then from those principles, that's when you've got the farming practices. And that's why multi-species farming is so important, because it's the farming aspect.
And it's not a recipe. There's principles. How are you going to do it versus how your neighbor is, or how someone in the southern US or in Ukraine or in England, they're all going to have the same principles. It's going to be the local adaptation.
Adaptation, good stuff. So I'd just like to bring us to that first photo that you sent to me. Take it away.
So if you look up Winnipeg, Manitoba, and then you travel about 3 hours northwest of it, so they wouldn't regard that as being the corn belt of Canada by any stretch of the imagination. But this is a multi-species crop of corn that is going to be about it's about 20 tons, metric tons per acre, so about 44 metric tons per hectare. So not bad stand. There's I think 12 different species in it, along with the corn. And once again, they saying, well, corn has to be clean. It can't have competition. Well, we're working on synergies. We're working on nutrient cycling. We're looking on building the soil biology to make it more resilient, to cycle more nutrients, to give that corn everything that it needs. And so then this producer goes in, salages it off, and then turns around and kicks the cows out. And with all of the species that are underneath the cutting bar that don't get cut, there's some fall grazing. So there's our continuous ground cover. There's our animal impact. There is our multi-species. And from that, we're getting more bug diversity. We're getting more animal diversity. It's a win-win-win with no fertilizer.
Wow. Okay. And so are you finding the negative pests are not making an impact?
Well, once again, if you want to have the good bugs in there, you have to have some low levels of the ones that the good guys want to eat. And if you don't have any of the pests and you keep it just super clean and you just have the good insects in there, well, the good insects are going to end up going somewhere else because they don't have anything to eat.
Mm.
So you need background levels, not, we don't want threshold where they're becoming a problem, but we need to have, food for our predators.
Absolutely. I'm going to bring us on to this photo. This is a monarch butterfly, and we have them over here in Australia as well. Now, the metamorphosis came from me speaking to Kevin and Rochelle and Dean. We were having a meeting about the conference, and I said, I see this caterpillar and it grows and it eats the actual citrus leaves, so a lot of the lemon and the lime trees that I've got, but it's eating them in such a manner that it's literally it's a symbiotic relationship. Yes, okay, the plant is losing some of its photosynthesizing area, but what's happening is this caterpillar ends up growing to about that size. It's a couple of inches in length, and it's a big fat one. And then it goes into its chrysalis. And then when it comes out and I walk past my tree and there's this beautiful big, and it's about this big, it's a pretty substantial size butterfly, is fluttering around me. I understand its history. I know where it's come from. I've watched it grow. And it does something to your soul when you experience this. And for Kevin, with this photo, can you just tell us the story behind this?
So this was a field that was it was soybeans. Then it was a full season cover crop, a very diverse mix that we end up paying. And this was during the early 20 teens. So these were the years we were, normally instead of having about 250 mils of rain in a growing season, we were over a meter. So we were extremely wet. So, but because we had the living root, because we're using the water, we had the infiltration, we had the soil aggregation, we had everything functioning. We got the winter triticale seeded into it, and as I was going through, once again, there's life. We don't use insecticides. Weren't using fungicides. I was, pulling up some roots to take a look at them, and actually pulled up. We have garter snakes, so they're a non-venomous snake. So I pulled out a root, and there was a garter snake underneath the roots of the triticale. So once again, I've never seen that in any other field. So once again, it's just a biofeedback from nature when we see these different insects, these beneficials, or even if they're a neutral like a monarch, it just shows that that things are all right in these fields.
It's quite unusual though, because that crop would be, is it wind pollinated? It's not insect?
Yes, it cross pollinates.
Yeah, okay. So who knows why that butterfly was there, but it knew.
Exactly. I was happy. It was happy. So.
Okay, what other photo shall we discuss? Shall I just flick through them and you just keep talking?
Yeah.
Would you like to go a bit more scientific with Paul's simulator?
Oh, yeah, we could do that.
All right.
So Paul Carnuglian was on, that was a couple of months ago. A regenerative dairy in northern Saskatchewan. And one of the things, so I've developed a spreadsheet to develop cover crop mixes for producers based on what goal, so we can play around with seeding rates, the species, all that good stuff. And so he had the brainwave of he had contacts in the computer world that we could put in these species, and it will give us an indication of the above ground growth and the below ground growth. So there's a lot of good research out there of the rooting structures of these different crops that we can grow. And so we can play around. So as we in the simulator, we can play around with the different row spacing. So if you're at 30 centimeters or you're at 7 centimeters, we can play around with that. We can play around with the different species, the seeding rates, And so this way we can really see what these root structures are. So when we are playing around and you know, in WA, when people were telling me about some of the cover crops that were, or even the pasture blends that they were doing, it's, you know, 5 ryegrasses and 2 clovers. And when you put that into the simulator, you see that the roots go down, you know, somewhere between 4 and 8 centimeters deep. As soon as we start throwing around with some chicory and we put some lucerne in, we can drive those roots down, you know, a meter or 2 meters. What does that do to our soil biology? What does it do to our resilience? What does it do to, you know, our whole system? And it's unbelievable how, uh, you know, we can reduce our reliance on synthetics when we can build this resilience in our system.
And just to clarify, this is a photo, so this is a still shot, but you can actually play it and it shows you, gives you different angles, doesn't it? It goes above and then it goes underneath, and you can really see the difference in the roots. So this doesn't do it justice. It's
doesn't
much
do it
better
justice. And then there's a newer version of it now, so that if you click show legumes, what it does is it shows the legume roots in different color, so that you can see the
Oh.
density of the legumes in the mix. When we put in some radish or turnips, it'll actually show the turnip or the radish in the ground too. So it's a beautiful piece of software that we're going to be busy this winter doing a lot of demonstrations with it and doing different blends for people to, you know, once again, try to stimulate, increase that diversity of the plants, which is going to drive the diversity of the microbes in the soil, which then, you know, it just keeps going. So then we start seeing different insects. Then we see different predators coming in and eat the insects. Now we have this whole ecosystem going. And once again, nothing new. This is old time agronomy. So it's just relearning, getting away from the reliance on synthetics, going back to more biological system. And so then we start seeing more earthworms in our systems. And once again, if we're sandy soils, maybe we don't see them as quickly, because, you know, that if I was naked crawling through sand, I wouldn't be very happy. But on our soils, we had loam, so we had decent clay and silt content. So, you know, we had earthworms. Jill Clapperton, she talks about if you dig up a 15 centimeter cube of soil, you should be seeing, you know, a minimum of 6 earthworms in that. And if you don't, okay, are they there? Like, are they down deeper? Where are they if they're not there? And so this way you flip the block upside down, you look for the holes of the passages of these earthworms where maybe they are down deeper. And, you know, I've seen earthworms on our land, after we had that meter of rain in the growing season. We went back to, you know, 150 mils, so quite dry. And so when we did our soil pit, we were seeing earthworms down at a meter and a half that were balled up like this. And so what an earthworm is, once again, nature's intelligence. When you see earthworms and they're balled up, they're going into hibernation. What they'll do is they'll spit mucus on themselves and create a basically an envelope that they protect themselves in. So this way they don't dry out. They keep the moisture inside them. When we do tillage, when we overgraze and we get compaction, that membrane can then split open, and then that earthworm has the potential to desiccate and then die. So another reason why we want to reduce tillage and, you know, do the tillage when it's going to do the least amount of damage to the system. And when we do the tillage, what positives are we going to be bringing back? And this is where, you know, go back to, you know, the Chinese farmers back, you know, a couple thousand years. They all knew this, that, you know, it was good not to do this, or it was good to do that. Now we have the science to back it up, and we can make positive steps forward to make sure we're doing more of the better things to move our soil health forward than to move us backwards.
And, you know, the first thing I noticed about this photo was how pink the worm is. And I believe that's because it is in hibernation. Therefore, when you normally pick a worm up, it's sort of a pinky brown color. Well, that's all the soil that it's munching, because they dig their tunnel, and as they move through the soil moves through them.
Yep.
They're
Yep.
incredible little critters. But this one is so pink, so he's obviously to go into hibernation, he needs to get rid of everything that's in him or her. Oh no, they're a hermaphrodite as well, aren't they?
Yeah. So when you are digging and you see earthworms and they're shallow, that means that it's going to be nasty for a little bit, but it's going to recover fairly quick. If you see these earthworms and they're down 1.5 meters, things are going to get really rough for the next little while. Once again, nature's intelligence. That earthworm knows that, okay, it's not perfect right now. I'm going to go down a couple centimeters. I'm going to hibernate, but things are going to get better quick. And then I'll be able to, I'm right in the zone I want to be, away we go. If they're down 1 meter, yeah, that's going to be ugly. And so when I was seeing them down at a meter and a half, I did management changes so that I was trying to drought proof my system. I was getting geared up so that things weren't going to be very good for a couple of years. And yeah, it was having 75 to 150 mils of moisture in a year. Now, that's not fun.
Wow. So you altered your practices on your farm because of the earthworms, where they were in the level, like the level of the soil.
I didn't tell people at the time because they would think I completely lost it because I'm talking to earthworms. But on the flip side, let's listen to nature. They've been at it way longer we have.
Wow, that's incredible. I love that. I really, really love that story. I'm so glad you incorporated that photo.
And bees.
Of course, bees.
This is the golden child of the insect community. Everybody, save the bees, and yeah, absolutely. They're visible. I like honey, and the biggest thing we need to be doing is having flowers throughout the whole growing season. And this is what through WA, for every month that I was there, every week something was flowering. You come into agricultural in Western Canada, we've gone to monocultures. We have less and less forage out there. Our bee population, and then we start throwing some neonics out there. The bee population, they were under a lot of stress. Yet on our farm, there was no one that was a honey producer for about 75 kilometers. But yet you go out to our fields, they were absolutely alive with the native pollinators. I saw so many different types of bees in our fields. I'm not a big one in identifying insects, but you can definitely tell the different types. So once again, going to add diversity. What does it cost to have a strip of a pollinator mix that are going to be starting to flower, after 30 days after you seed it, and yet something is still flowering after 110 days of growing. And so that's just going to feed our natural pollinators. There's a dairy Huttery colony in western Saskatchewan. We did a multi-species silage cover crop for them, and we were talking about. There was one of his friends from another colony was over, and he asked me, "Is this stuff good for bees?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely." So he brought over a bunch of hives, and when they came in the fall, after they salvaged this cover crop, the other colony picked it up and took it back home. They started extracting, and he said that they got over 50 kilos extra honey out of those hives as compared to anything else. Yeah. And they would have got more if they would have picked up the hives earlier, added more stacks on it, because they were absolutely stuffed right full.
Yeah. Yeah, I have my own bees, and it's I did when I was regenerating my life and still regenerating it. I went to a lot of conferences back in the early days, same as the regenerative farming. Well, as you know through the video, I tripped over the regenerative farming and the beekeepers. And weeds are a huge biofuel for bees. And they are, a lot of the weeds are flowering all year round, you know, the different species. Interestingly, with the European honeybee, of course, in Europe, we use them to pollinate our food. And so when the European honeybees goes to a different continent, like say Africa or to Australia, the food, unless the Europeans have moved there, the food isn't there. So we have very high nectar producing plants and flowers and less of the pollen. And so that's why it's really important to make sure that you have got weeds in your multi-species. I'm not talking about whether, it's not so important in your actual crop because they are a bit of a pain, but around the outside of your paddocks or your fields, just to make sure that you are feeding that diversity. Because I've got, and we all hate it here, it's called billy goat weed. It's the blue top. And it's known as other stuff as well, but it's high, super high in pollen. And it's everywhere. It just covers the paddocks, but I know that I'm feeding the bees as well. So it's all in moderation. And that's the other thing with the bee populations, when they're being transported to pollinate a monoculture, whether it's blueberries or almonds or citrus, it's all monoculture. So you have to make sure, and that's when they get fed as well, sort of artificially fed, because they need the pollen and the nectar. And you suddenly realize how invasive humans are being to these beautiful insects. And also they are, like you say, save the bees, they are the canary of our ecosystems. And if people don't understand that, we used to take canaries down into the mines so that if they carked it, you knew that you were breathing in, what gas was it? Some not very nice gas anyway. You had to move out of there, otherwise you were going to explode and die. It went something along those lines. So absolutely important. And observations, and I love your observations there, Kevin, because it's so important that diversity is there. So let's move on to a bigger animal.
So just in case the neighbors didn't think I was completely crazy, we went from grazing beef cattle, and we put up a little bigger fence, and we brought in some bison. And once again, what I love about the bison is they're naturally mob grazers. They always want to be in a tight herd because they have this fear of predators. In our beef, especially beef cattle, if you just open up the fence and let them graze, they'll be scattered throughout the whole paddock, and they're not very social. Whereas these bison, they always move as a herd. They're always moving, and they're always grazing. And so they, there's some of their favorite spots. So I tried luring them away by moving the salt around different places, but it's doing something different. And what they do to the soil, their grazing patterns, a lot more conducive for regenerative as compared to beef, without having to, having the fencing and the back fences, and it's one of those, once again, easy buttons. We all want to be lazy. We don't want to be lazy, but we end up wanting to tend that way. But it was something where, okay, here's the feed. They're out there for 7 months doing their thing. They know what they're doing. And so because we had white-tailed deer out there, and we had moose, never mind, the birds, it was just more diversity. You would argue that beef, we had the same thing. But they're a lot more work.
So what did you do with them once they'd served their purpose?
So every April, so when the snow was leaving, then the owner would come back, and we would have a bit of a rodeo. We would get him into a corral and get him into one of the floats, and he would take them back home. And what he found was, with the heifers that I had, he said normally they don't put on weight during our winter. They just maintain. They kind of they hold their own. But he said when he picked these ones up, number one, he didn't have to deworm them, whereas the ones that he had at home, he had to because they're being fed differently. And the other thing is, he said they're a little fleshy. And even though like they were eating 15 different species out there, um, they did extremely well.
So you were talking about adjusting somebody's cattle. Were you actually talking about the bison?
Well, so for 19 years, we were borrowing the neighbor's beef cattle, and we had standing corn, and we would graze that during the winter. Um, when I wanted to get deeper into get more livestock impact on more of the land, and this is when one of our other customers, seed customers, I was throwing it at him, and he said, "Well, have I thought about bison?" And said, "Well, I know nothing about them." He said, "Well, they're easy." so we did the next change, and we seeded down more perennial pasture and brought in bison.
Okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know that you could adjust bison. That's like out there.
they're another ruminant, so we just did the switch, and once again metamorphosis from beef over to bison.
Yeah, no, I love it. And then incorporating something else into your farming system.
So yeah, this is once again this adapting to the conditions. So we played around with some multi-species cropping, and once again kept it simple. We had two different species, and different seed sizes, but they harvest at the same time. We just ran it through a rotary cleaner, did the quick separation. So it was once again a little bit of work, a little bit different. Once again, neighbors were shaking their head at me, uh, but when you start working the economics of it, so I guess when you go back to when you look at the constraints of the context of what you can or cannot do, what other people think of me, it really doesn't show up high on the scale of relevance to me. So if people think I'm crazy, well, okay, go ahead. If I'm not making money doing it, okay, yes, that is crazy. But if you're actually making money and it means a little bit of work, yeah, let's do it.
Absolutely. So when you're talking about money, let me just talk about profit. So there's what I classify as 4 quadrants of profit. So you've obviously got your finance, you've got your time, health, and the environment. And like I said before, the environment might not necessarily be your landscape. It might be the environment that you're living at home, how you are living your life. And balancing those 4 is really important. So yeah, your financial side, I believe, could take a bit of a hit, but as long as the other 3 were sort of fairly well balanced and synergistically working together, then yes, it's okay to take a hit occasionally, especially if you're learning. However, you do want to make sure that profit of finance is going to maintain what you're doing. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it, is there?
And that's the thing I want to put a caveat on that is the economics, the financial part. Are you looking at 1 year or the whole rotation? Because when I would seed a cover crop, and even the 1 year I didn't harvest it, so this is what usually my background with all of the different clovers and Phacelia and everything up behind me. That year I used it as a nurse crop for my perennial ryegrass seed crop that was going to overwinter. So that was my nurse cover crop. And I did the numbers on it. And because I left that cover crop grow, the snow pushed it down, it rotted, and it fed my perennial ryegrass crop. If I would have used a cash crop to use as my nurse crop, which is the traditional way of seeding the perennial ryegrass, because in year 1 it just stays vegetative and short. So you need the cash crop. So if I would have seeded the cash crop, any profit I would have received from that cash crop with the perennial ryegrass would have went straight back in to buy fertilizer and spray. Because I let the biological process push that cover crop down, rot, release the nutrients, feed the soil biology, create armor, having more animal diversity out in that field, that more than compensated for the lack of income I got from that first year if I would have had a cash crop. And so when we're looking at, say, a 4-year rotation, and you do one thing and then you have 4 other crops in there, what is that one crop? How does that influence those other 4 years of that rotation? And so this is the thing I always challenge producers when they start talking about, the economics. And yeah, I made so much money growing this crop, but what did it cost you for the next crop? What did it cost you for your rotation?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's part of the environment, part of, it just complicates things when I start talking about systems and long-term measurement.
But that's where that whole transformation comes into play, that you don't just change X, Y, and Z. You have to live it, breathe it, understand it, and know that if it appears that you're taking a knock, you're not. Because, well, you might be in a certain aspect, but on the greater whole, the greater good is actually progressing exponentially sometimes.
Absolutely. Big picture stuff. And that's a systems approach. That's what usually frustrates so many people when we get into it. It's you have to look at the big picture, whereas we're more concerned about the day-to-day operation of our operation and where we're going to generate the money to pay the bills that we're spending today. It's this bigger view of this thing that we call food production.
Absolutely. All right, I'm sure this gentleman has a story.
Adam Knutson from Wapella, Saskatchewan, Canada. So been working with him for about 8 or 9 years, and adding diversity into his perennial forages, and then he took it to the next level of having strips of corn in his field and then having cover crops in between, so that this way this will catch a little more snow, create less problems when he's fencing, and this is his main mode of transportation when he's going out and checking the cows. Once again, a little more diversity in the management system. So running around with the horse, well, it's going to be grazing a little different than what his beef cows are going to be doing. Because it eats something different, it has a different digestive system. It's going to be pooping out some different microbes. It's just going to help stimulate the soil. Does he have enough to make a huge impact? No, but once again, it's working with his system.
A little bit different, and not a ruminant either. Just want
exactly.
to clarify that. Now then, when you're talking about a strip, how wide were his strips of corn?
It'll be 7 meters.
Oh, so 7 just meters. One pass, you mean then?
One pass, and then you would have, I think it was 14 meters of the cover crop, and then 7 meters of corn again.
Oh, so he strips. Yeah, he did double his cover cropping to his cash crop.
Yeah, so in the United States, they're using most of the corn is on 30-inch rows, and so now there's producers playing around with 60-inch corn and having cover crops in between, and they're in a lot of cases finding that there's no negative repercussions of going to this wider row and getting more benefit of having this cover crop underneath.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I love his horse too. Will he come on the channel, do you think?
I haven't talked to him about it. I can give him a shout, and we can see if we can get him on one of these Sunday morning chats for you.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love that. And then somebody else who we have met on screen.
the Paul Carnuglian from Birch Hill, Saskatchewan. Actually, if anybody's listening and going to be joining Graham Reese on his Western Canadian tour, they're going to see if they can stop at Adam's place, but they are definitely going to Paul's place. And so there's a product that he is retailing called the Razor Grazer. And so it's a self-contained unit. So this way it has the step-in post, has the wire, has an energizer, so you can electrify. So if you don't have a paddock that is fenced, in 45 minutes, it could be fenced.
Wow. Like a big paddock, I presume.
Yeah. These are, I think there's enough wire on it to do 800 meters squared.
Okay. Excellent. All right, we'll take the opportunity to. I wish I was going on that one, actually. I'd love to meet Paul in person.
Oh, he's cool.
He's a visionary, isn't he? He's an ingenious man. He's doing so many different things, but they're all interlinked. And yeah, the more I hear about him.
Oh, absolutely. And this is when, he definitely bought into the cover cropping idea, and the results he saw, and he's going out and he's talking about it. And I said, well, do you want to be a retailer for me? So, okay, that was easy. And so he was retailing that. So then he started. I told him, anytime that you're using something, why aren't you a retailer? So then he was buying Gallagher stuff off of me, and then he decided he he I don't know what happened with Gallagher, but anyways, he went with Speedray. He liked that product line better, so now he's selling that. So yeah, absolutely, really busy operation.
So this is true metamorphosis here with Paul. Just mind-openingly, yeah, brilliant. I just love it. I love stories like this.
So when I first met him, so that means he was an ugly caterpillar, but now he's a beautiful butterfly.
That's right. You can tell him that. That's fine.
So this is southwest of Edmonton, Alberta, and this is Shorty Fensky. He's another brilliant mind. He's been playing around with a lot of compost. He's doing multi-species cropping. Well, once again, more diversity on his farm. He does custom fencing. So, but in his garden, he's gone to Raised Gardens and he's gone to Chaos Gardens. And once again, the way his mind works is just unbelievable. So he's figuring out which species to grow together, and what type of compost to put with it, and once again, diversity. Is it new? Absolutely not. People have been doing it for thousands of years, but it's something where we've gone to the simplicity, convenience of monocultures. It's not working. We have to go back and we have to learn. And how do we learn? Well, we can go back and try and figure out, try and get some old references of what to do, or play around and research. I've been saying for years, you only learn by doing. And if the book may say that you grow these two vegetables and it's going to be better, well, does that work with your context? Does it work with your soil type? Does it work with your climate? Does it work with your latitude? Does it work with all these different variables that we have?
Yeah, and you can get plenty of books that are companion planting, and I have had a go, but not to much success. But again, because I was just changing something, I wasn't actually really understanding and grasping the concept.
Absolutely.
Good old
Blythe Callan. The chooks. I've never seen 2,500 free range chooks before until I went down to visit Blythe Callan, and there was 2,500 chooks. So what she was doing is, the multi-species. She would run the beef cows through, do the graze, and follow up with the chooks. And she's a great mind to really get into and talk to, because she understands these systems. She understands the economics of it, and once again, you learn by doing. So she found out that if you leave the chooks in one paddock for too long, guess what? They don't promote soil health. The soil health goes backwards. They do too much damage. So it's learning and adapting and getting this thing to work and to observe and making mistakes is not a bad thing. It's repeating mistakes that is a bad thing. And we have to learn to move forward.
And just the pure simplicity of these chickens going through and scratching the poo and eating the larvae so that you reduce your fly population. I mean, like simplicity, outstandingly.
And then you work on the economics. You know, I don't know what her costs or overhead was, but you know, to have 2,500 chooks and sell out every week of eggs, incredible.
Wow. Yeah. Collecting that many eggs, I would say, was pretty
Well,
hardcore.
she has a pretty good system with the egg mobiles, shall we call them? So it's really efficient in that way. But you know, once again, it's just stacking the enterprises,
Yeah.
and each one is carrying its own weight. So guess what? When people complain that there's no money in farming, well, we're just trying to farm the wrong things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll round it up on the good old microscopic organisms.
Exactly, and this is where you know the world that we're not exposed to, and you know when we start looking at what's under our feet, you know we talk about fungi, we talk about bacteria, and that's normally that's I was going to say the good stuff we talk about, but no, we try and kill the fungi with fungicides and these big bad nematodes out there. Uh, it once again, when we have the whether it's weeds, if it's insects, if it's the bad microbes, it's an indication that we have a broken system. And so when we have root feeding nematodes, it's an indication we have poor soil structure. So once we build soil structure back, we get enough predators in there to consume the root feeders, so they disappear. Then you know, Dr. Zavala, she said that was the biggest water bear that she has seen out of any soil, and that was from down at Serpentine in Western Australia, which
Wow.
it wouldn't be a place you would think that there would be these big predatory microbes in the soil, but there it is. It's an absolute monster. If I was a microbe in the soil, yes, it'd be like a grizzly out
Yes.
in the Rockies. I would be avoiding it.
Run away as fast as you can.
And as a microbe, their feet really don't work all that well. But this is the thing: like when we start looking under the microscope, and once again, Graham Reese, this is one of the stops that he's going to be stopping is at the Chinook Applied Research Association, and go through their soil health lab and look at the microscope and what you know is that a good nematode or a bad one. And Dr. Zavala, she educated me on how to tell the difference. So you look at the mouth, but you know this is that whole thing when people talk to me about, oh, I got bad nematodes, I'm going to grow some mustard, so you know I'm going to biofumigate. And I said, whoa, don't stop fumigating. And what is that bad nematode telling you? Bad soil structure. So get more facility in there, get more living roots, get the biennial plants in there. We have to build this resilience. And then when you see that little critter right in the middle, that's one of the rotifers. And once again, it's if we just had the bacteria and the fungi, our nutrient cycles would stop. We need these predators. We need the rotifers. We need the ciliates. We need the flagellates. We need the nematodes. Nematodes are extremely important in our nutrient cycling. And when we have nutrient deficiencies, you know, well, okay, we biofumigated. Well, if you biofumigated and you took out the nematodes, your nutrient cycles are going to pay the price on it.
Yeah, well, so much importance on a whole different level of living organisms that you can't see. Like just because you can't see, and I say again,
multi-species farming.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just because you can't see it doesn't mean to say it's not there. And it's the same as energy. It's the same as so many different things that we just don't understand, but because we don't interact with it on a day-to-day basis, as far as we're concerned, it doesn't exist, or it's not important. Like we're far more important because we can communicate. We think we can communicate, but I tell you what, animals are way better at communicating.
We're smart.
Yeah, apparently so, yes.
Or maybe not.
I do. When I was teaching the girls and a couple of boys, obviously, to ride, it was, look, understand and read your horse and pony, and know that we're just stupid humans at the end of the day. They've already worked out that there's a wallaby behind that bush because they can hear it. We don't even know it exists. So just be prepared for a spook or something like this. And unfortunately, we do put so much emphasis on how amazing we are. And we just got to listen and observe. There's one thing, I did sit in a yarning circle organized by Iris Catisse, and a gentleman stood up, and it was a profound thing that he said, and it will stay with me until I die. And I have added to it. So he said, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And he said, you have to listen twice before you are qualified to speak. Now, I believe, especially because we observe so much, that we have 2 ears, 2 eyes, and only 1 mouth. So in actual fact, we have to listen with our eyes and our ears 4 times. Then we're qualified to open our mouth and sort of have our own opinion, as long as our perception doesn't get in the way and all those cognitive bias and things like that. So can you see how it's all interlinked?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And okay, I think we should just leave us on this note. Just to make it a bit more goofy.
I don't know where I got that from. It was off of Facebook a couple years ago, or Twitter, and I said, "Oh, I gotta borrow that," and I said I'm gonna reenact it and do it myself, but I don't know. I get distracted in a short period of time, so I just keep this one. This is awesome.
I think, Kevin, we are reenacting it. Look, I'm the one on the right, you're the one on the left. So we've been reenacting it for the whole morning. I've only just noticed the similarity, oh no. All right. Okay, what I was going to say, I was going to finish off actually on sharing a screen. If that's okay. Are we all finished? Are we good? I think, yep, you've done a great job as usual. I'm going to do something I haven't done before on here, which is share a screen, which I don't think is all that difficult, but there you go. Okay, so then this is my website, farmingrevolution.com.au, and you can see the sliding banner at the bottom. So for those of you that are watching this video, Kevin and I have given you I'm going to say a great introduction to multi-species farming. That's a bit of self-confidence there. Just click on this sliding banner at the bottom, and what will happen is, I'm presuming, can you see that that's changed? Because I haven't done this. Yeah, okay. So this is the landing page for the conference for March next year, and it will give you all the details and the locations. Kevin will be speaking, and then our hosts, and there's Rochelle coaching, Dean Bentley, men's circle processing, and yeah, so that's this. And then just at the back, if you ever want to contact any of us, Tamzin, Martin, Russell and Kevin, we're all here at the back. Okay, so we've what did you call it? It's not collaborate. Kevin, what did you call it?
Synergistic partnership.
At arm's length.
At arm's length, yeah. Arm's length synergistic partnership.
Perfect. And so it's, yeah, I love that. I just feel that people don't understand the word collaborate as well as they could. And so, yes, I like that synergistic cooperation. All right. So if nobody's got any questions, then we will sign off for a beautiful Sunday day. Oh, Saturday evening for you, Kevin. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Much appreciated. I hope you've got a little bit better understanding of what multi-species farming is. And we've all been able to learn and listen to Kevin a little bit more, and hopefully we will be here, but you can all tune in a fortnight, because we're here live every fortnight, every 2 weeks on a Sunday for the Sunday session on Farming Revolution. Okay, thanks everybody for joining us. Have a good day.